Hello and welcome to part one of our three-part webinar series on community insights. Firstly, thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you taking an hour out of your day. We know that's not always easy, so a big thank you for jumping on the session. We're set, just looking at the attendees, to have a real good contribution from different areas of the public sector. We've got emergency services, housing associations and local councils as well. So hopefully lots of contribution to a real good conversation. I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to get stuck in and introduce you to our speakers. So we have a full Orlo squad today. I'll start with myself. I am Rosie Knight, Senior Customer Success Manager here at Orlo. You'll recognise me if you're in the housing associations or charities. I look after those sectors. Today, my job is to keep us on track, run the session, and I'll be hosting Q&A at the end as well. I am joined by Jack Fox, Senior Digital Consultant here at Orlo. If you've been lucky enough to work with Jack, you will know that he leaves no stone unturned when it comes to understanding the challenges that the public sector face. So really excited to have Jack with us. And then last but not least, Hardeep Johal, our product Director of Product and Development. He is the mastermind behind our technology. So he'll be talking us through today how the tech can actually help us drive some action. So that's the team. A little bit of housekeeping before we get stuck in. So we've got 60 minutes booked out. We're hoping to do about 45 minutes of us talking and then a good 15 minutes of Q&A at the end. Our aim is to hopefully make this as conversational as possible. So please do get involved. There is a QA box. It should be on your right-hand side of the screen. So not the chat box, but the QA one. Drop your questions in there and we'll address them as we go through. So no need to wait to the end. Just pop them in that section of the webinar. Final point on this is that we are recording. You can only see us. So if you sat eating your lunch, don't worry, we can't see you. It's only us three that's been recorded. We will also distribute this afterwards, so you can have it in your inbox should you miss anything. Okay then, so I mentioned this is part one of 3 sessions we're running. Today's topic is on how can social media intelligence help public sector organisations to create safer communities. It's a big topic. So we're going to start by just asking the question, what does a safe community look like? And, just covering the sectors that are joining today, that will mean different things for different people. So I went and I asked AI, what does a safe community look like? And it returned a very big, long answer. This is a shortened version of that. I couldn't fit it on the screen, actually, what it returned. So we've summarised it into 10 points. But essentially what it said was, a safe community is one where residents feel secure in their surroundings and they can live without fear of harm or danger. And if you look at these points, the spectrum is broad. So it ranges from a low crime rate, well-maintained infrastructure, so a safe home to live in, right through to having mental health services that are accessible, and also to feeling safe in our community spaces, be it parks or community areas. All of those fit under the topic of safety. But what we control, so today we're probably joined by comms teams members, marketing and service teams, we control point 10. And that's the kind of bingo moment of this, when we were looking at what to discuss today. It's about a proactive approach to prevention. So we have this big challenge that we're faced with, but how do we drill it down and make it bite-sized? So you can hopefully leave this session, and as we go through it, you'll be thinking about, what do I control out of this big challenge? And how can tomorrow or in the weeks that follow, we actually start looking at impact. And on that note, I'm going to pass over to Fox.
Cheers, Rosie. Thanks very much. Looking forward to getting into the session today. I thought I'd just open up with highlighting the importance of community and the way that we think about it here at Orlo. So most of you have just spoke to Orlo, and you'll know that as well as us being a great bunch of people, we're extremely passionate about supporting public sector organisations to help their communities. So what this has done is it's really driven us in a way that we have got a really clear vision around creating stronger and more resilient communities. And to do this, we want to help you build trust in communities through brilliant conversations. So what that really means is a conversation can take many different guises. It could be a conversation that's happening about you that you don't know about. It could be a conversation that's happening directly with you, with a resident or a citizen. Or it could be a lovely piece of comms you put out, messaging that's helping people. But either way, it's an opportunity to build relationship with the community that you're engaging with and supporting. So this really drives everything that we do. It's the purpose of why we're doing the webinar today and how we develop our product. But every single member of the Orlo team is based in the UK. And the kind of benefit of that is that we really understand the challenges and the issues that are happening in the sector, and allows us to really collaborate with all of our customers as well. So it's a very exciting place to be. Now, we mentioned community quite a lot, so let me just kind of frame this in another way around some of the communities we're working with in the UK, one of which is in South of Wales. And we know that actually there's around 300,000 people living in the South of Wales, and Orlo is supporting many of the organisations within that area that are providing services to the public to keep them healthy, to keep them safe, and build stronger, more resilient communities. But the question always is, what's going on in that community? How do people feel about living there? What are the problems? How safe and healthy do they actually feel? And what changes need to be made to drive prosperity in that particular community? So these are the questions that lots of organisations are asking, and is massively part of their corporate strategies and plans. But some of the key stats we know around in the area, one of which is that within South of Wales, there's been an increase of antisocial behaviour, a 3.2% increase. So this has a big impact on everyone living there, as well as the health outcomes too. So in light of this, what we're helping to do and to answer some questions around is, how do we demonstrate a proactive approach to listening to our community and really leveraging the data to shape safety initiatives, for example? Or how can we reactively, in real time, listen to our audience and use that information to create a safer community as well? So there's lots and lots of challenges there, but it's all about working together as one. Now, we talked about a specific community there in the South of Wales, and we're working with many different communities all around the UK. But what we do know is that nationally, there are some really big challenges. The cost of living crisis is having a really big impact on people's mental health, which is meaning they're relying more on the NHS than ever before. The financial struggles are leading to more people becoming homeless and defaulting on their mortgages, which is a really hard place to be. And residents within housing associations and communities are experiencing more antisocial behaviour than ever before. And it's driving some challenges that need to be addressed. The question we're trying to answer here is, well, how do we actually move the dial on these statistics, whether it's nationally, but actually within your communities that you serve, as communications professionals, as organisations? And our role as an organisation is to help bridge that gap and build trust. And, you know, there's no silver bullet to this, but there is action you can take now to help. And the action part's really important because the benefit of really listening is you can understand the nuances of your community and take action that's going to help prevent something or someone becoming ill, or turning to drugs or alcohol addiction, and these are really common in many different areas of the community. But in doing so, what it does do is, as well as being the right thing to do, there's a huge financial advantage that all organisations in the public sector can actually embrace, and that's a really exciting opportunity here. And the quote on the slide really nicely sums that position there. And there's another stat around alcohol treatment, and for every £1 spent locally within your community provides a return of £3. So that prevention opportunity there for every £1 spent. And actually local addiction support services in different communities are saving the NHS nationally around £2 billion by intervening and supporting your communities proactively. So as communications and marketing professionals, we've got a real big opportunity here to not only affect the community really positively, but actually drive financial benefit and have a real impact on the community that we serve as well. but it's not an easy place to be. There are a lot of conversations going on everywhere. How do you make sense of that data? You've got 20,000 conversations happening across multiple different sources about topics around health, about safety, people asking questions, needing help, support, who are vulnerable people in your community. How do you listen to them? And yeah, we're not saying that Orlo is the silver bullet to answering all of these questions, but it is our job to show data, information that's going to help guide action that's going to support your community right here and right now. And therefore, we've built a piece of our product called Insights that some of you might be aware of, that's really designed to support decision making and action, whether it's a new piece of content that you're putting out or feeding back to the service areas that are actually supporting your local communities too. So what I'll do now is I'll hand over to Hardy, who's our head of product, to give you a bit of an overview.
Thank you, Jack. Do you mind just at that point, if we could just pause for a moment? So obviously you spend a lot of time talking to public sector organisations about their strategy and what technologies they're going to implement to support that. I'm just wondering, have you seen a shift or anything change in recent months or over the last 12 months in terms of people starting to take an interest in this and how they're, what's the first question and how does that develop, I guess, in terms of what they put into there?
Yeah, it's a really great question, but every single team I speak to, whether it's in comms or different areas across any public sector organisation, is that they're there to do a good job and they really care about their community. It's a really difficult position to be with budgets, being cut as they are, and it's a real struggle to find the right campaigns or find the right angle to support or have the data to drive action. And as we've moved through COVID and we've gone through kind of some really testing times, more than ever, organisations are looking for ways to cut through the noise, engage with their community, build the trust that they want and need, and actually give residents and citizens access to information, signposts to actually take the right decisions and support their own health outcomes, support safety, whether maybe it's even a train company, maybe it's an NHS organisation. So it's ways of making use of the finances and the money they've got to improve the service areas that are being squeezed all the time. So that's one trend that we're definitely seeing across all types of public services.
Amazing, thank you. And I think what that does is frames it really nicely. We've set the scenario and we've kind of tackled the challenge, and now Hards will show us how we can drive some action and look at the technology side. So I'll hand over to you, Hards.
Thanks, Rosie. Appreciate that. Cheers, Jack. Let's get a hand of how we control these slides. There we go. So yeah, the purpose of my section is really to bring to life the product and how it's going to help you address some of the issues and challenges that Jack mentioned earlier. And as Rosie and Jack just said, we've developed a product that has been created specifically with public sector in mind and their challenges. And it's our version of what we believe a social listening platform should be, and again, tailored specifically to your needs. One of the biggest challenges, of course, is getting the data. A lot of our decisions have to be based on fact, and most of the time, and not just inkling, although most of the time our gut feeling is correct. And sometimes we can use that data to sort of advise what our policy changes should be, what comm strategies we should deploy to correct misinformation and so forth, or also deal with individuals tactically as well if you see vulnerable people who maybe put messages out on social or directly with you. So the Orlo platform itself, which most of you are already aware of, is embedded into almost every single social network out there. More recently as well, really proud to have integrated with Nextdoor. The listening part of the product, where you're not just looking at direct mentions, messages into your inbox or replies on to tweets or comments on your posts, is looking at the rest of the digital sphere. And what we mean there is these indirect mentions, not just about yourselves and your organizations, but maybe the topics you're interested in as well. So to achieve that collection of data, we partnered with an organization called LexisNexis, which I'm sure most of you may know. They are like the premier source of press and media data. So you can think of everything from Mumsnet, Forum, which my wife, when we had kids, was definitely into quite a bit, through to what's being said on The Guardian. And this includes all the data behind paywalls as well. We also have integrations with all the review sites as well. So if you're interested in what people are saying about you on Google Reviews, Glassdoor, your app stores, wherever it may be, We can pull all that information as well as having search across the whole X network, so formerly Twitter, as well as public Facebook pages as well. That in itself presents quite a significant problem to you because you'd be gathering millions of bits of data. And Allo Insights is that big blue box in the middle there, which is really aimed at using our homegrown AI analytics and reporting capabilities to make sense of all of that information, highlight what's really important, where people are really frustrated, what they love, what they hate, and things that may need action immediately. Also really powerfully highlighting the unknown unknowns, which I'll talk about a bit later as well. And then our goal is to help you take action. Some of that action can take place in Allo, and some of it is, within the policies, the structures, the processes, and the products that you put in place yourself. And we'll go through that now as we take it into the product. So just a bit of a preamble before we get into actually showing the application. Social media intelligence really can help identify themes regarding public safety. There are some obvious ones out there, but what we'll show you through here is potentially finding things you may not be aware of. In terms of data coverage, I know it sounds all really functional, we have access to millions of sources in terms of press and media, sites and publications, and that's in addition to the billions of social media posts as well that we can scour in real time. We have really interesting, quite user-friendly search capabilities as well to try and demystify all of that. Like, to have all that data and trying to make sense of it is really difficult. So what you want to do is sift out all the noise and just find the stuff that's really important to yourselves. And then we want to use AI as much as possible to help alert us to things as well. So we're not always living in the Allo application. So I'll be showing you how you can be notified of things when you're not necessarily just at your web browser. Going a step further as well, we want to help you understand the demographics in your communities as well, what their interests are, what their gender makeup is, their age groups, etc. We know we're coming into an election year as well. That's probably more important than ever before. And from a table stakes perspective, a lot of people talk about sentiment analysis. And what we want to show you is that emotion is really powerful as well, and something that you should be sort of delving into and understanding more around those feelings that your citizens, your tenants, your residents are facing or feeling even. So with that, I'll dive into the product. Hopefully you should be able to see my screen. Yeah, I've got some links. That's good. Yeah. So where it all starts for us, so this is Allo Insights. It all starts with building your query, and that can sound quite overwhelming. You don't have to be a data scientist to do this, and hopefully we've demystified that process. So we don't embarrass anyone on this call or put a magnifying glass on any particular organisation. I'm just going to do a generic search across the UK government and what the feelings are, thoughts are around the UK government at the moment, which we could probably all guess. I think anyone's particularly that happy. And where it starts with is building a query like this. So this is called Boolean logic. A lot of you may have seen this before. And the whole premise here is saying, I'm going to search for a bunch of words and phrases across the web, if you think about it that way. And they could be keywords themselves, or they could be individual social profiles as well. And you can build in logic around, show me things that include these topics, but not these topics. And you can group them as well. So what we're searching for here is across the web, and any publicly available data source that we've got across the social networks is anybody talking about the UK, United Kingdom, England, Scotland, and any of these mentions of the government, politics, political issues. Again, just to try and help you through this process, we'll even write this out to you in like English as well. So to help you say, right, based on the query you're building, this is what you want to see, right? This is what you want to pull back. Now, clearly here, I've been a bit discriminatory. I've missed out Wales, so I can quite easily add that in. And then at this point, we just click Save Query. From here, we can select all the data sources that we want to gather information from. So as you can see, it's quite broad. Everything from Twitter through to the blogs, the news sites, and you would have saw in there things like podcasts and online media as well, which we can then scour and bring into the platform. We give you the capability to say, do you want to include retweets or not? Now, for something to go viral, it's probably been retweeted, so we often suggest that you do that. You save that as an option. So that you are capturing things that could be emerging really quickly, that one person's posted and it's just all of a sudden just blown up everywhere. And if you want to pull in certain Facebook pages, you can as well. Again, so that's a new addition that we've added to the product. And all you need to do is click Save Stream, and that's it. That data is going to start pulling in. What we also give you out of the box is numerous dashboards. So based on the query that we created there, I did this a couple of days ago, we've already pulled in 86,000 bits of data. Again, this is quite overwhelming. Nobody's going to be able to read all that and make sense of it really easily. And we don't have loads of data teams available to us at hand. They're busy doing lots of other things. So these dashboards are meant to really simply show you what's happening in that data. So without even having to read it, you can see that, right, there's no surprise that budget cuts are a big issue that's been discussed throughout all this data. Immigration concerns are a problem. But actually today, I don't know if you saw the news, there's a new rail link between Wales in the Midlands, which will connect people to London really quickly as well. So this theme cloud here is what we call it, is the whole purpose is just to really quickly give you a snapshot of what the general context of all that information is. And then obviously you can dig into these and drill down into them as well. These dashboards are completely customizable. You can share them, you can export them to PDF in a few days' time as well. You'll be able to automatically send these to your inbox. They say, I want to see this report every week on a Friday based on this data. And you can share that with all your colleagues as well. You may have noticed over here as well, we've built something called the trust indicator. I mentioned earlier that we are building this product specifically for the needs of the public sector. And we also know that unfortunately trust is at an all-time low. You can see this through various PwC surveys and the ONS surveys as well. And what we try and do is give you a gauge of how trusted or not your organisation is. So right now we're saying across the UK, the general feeling of this population, based on data we've gathered over the last 5-6 days, is pretty poor. And this is a scale of -100 to +100. So if you're familiar with the NPS calculation, this is just like that. And then what we do, rather than just leave you with that and scratching your head, we'll give you an idea of what are the causes of that. And obviously the biggest thing that came out over the last week was this new budget, and also a lack of transparency and accountability. We would have seen, not in the last few days, some of the issues that the Labour Party have been facing. I'm not swaying anybody politically either way, but when you dig into these boxes, you get more information based on that theme cloud analogy there as well. Throughout this report, you can see the sentiment breakdown. So typically what this is going to show, when you get a lot of data, everything tends to average itself out quite a bit. So you could just say, actually, we're all kind of neutral, and we don't really feel one way or another. But things like the trust indicator, things like this theme cloud, help highlight where the issues are and also where things are going really positively as well. So if we just go down a bit, you can see spikes of data over time. Again, some of this stuff you would probably just expect to see. But we also use AI as much as possible to show you things about the demographic information of the individuals creating the content. So what we have here is obviously an age breakdown, and we use AI as much as possible to help us with that, where we don't necessarily have it given by the network or by the publications. And also we try to give genders as well. Just to highlight, we're not trying to be discriminatory here. At the moment, the algorithms and the data provided to us currently split between male and female. But we'll develop that as more data becomes available to account for the various different genders as well. And organisations here, what this represents is publications or brand accounts that could be talking about governmental issues. So yeah, I mean, it's no surprise here that there's very little engagement from those people under the age of 30 who we know at the moment are not going to the polling stations, not voting, generally disengaged. So again, no surprise there. What I want to really get to quite quickly is this visualization here, which I really like. So emotions are core to us as humans. It sounds like a silly thing to say, but it literally drives our behavior. How we feel drives our actions more than logic most of the time, unless you're a bit of a robot. And what we're able to do here is extract 28 different emotions to tell you how people are thinking and feeling. So when we're talking about things like safety, we want to look for emotions like vulnerability, disapproval, so on and so forth. So as I mentioned earlier, all these things can be drilled into. And when we drill into the disapproval emotion, this is what we're seeing here. So the budget cuts that were made, or the budget spending that was presented last week, there's a lot of conversation here around, just to rewind a bit, when you click on each various widget at any point, we'll give you the top 5 biggest talking points within that. So the top 5 conversation topics within any point that you click on within any graph. So when we're looking at disapproval, the biggest point here is criticism of the budget. Specifically, there's been a lot of conversation around how that budget is affecting Scotland and the betrayal of public services. So Jack mentioned earlier, public services are being relied on way more than ever before. That includes housing associations. Yet, according to press, media, public perception, the cuts are meaning that those services aren't going to be able to provide this level of service and the amount of service that is actually required by their citizens and by their communities. And then you can see here as well, the next biggest thing is talking about climate action. We know that's a hot topic, no longer just a buzzword, but also then humanitarian crisis in Gaza and criticism of UK's definition of extremism, which is just what came out today as well. So yeah, so I think that's really interesting. You can see there within a few clicks, you've gone from like 80,000 bits of data down to a real narrow, thorough funnel, and really allocating the key issues around particular emotions.
So I just step in. I'm just thinking, so we've obviously covered building the stream, which is obviously the first point of this process, and then we've got your pre-build reports. I just think it's worth noting, obviously, my role is to help in the last few weeks support build those streams out and build those reports. So I think if anyone's kind of watching and thinking it looks amazing, looks great, but actually how do I get to that point? I think it's just worth noting that that's a process that you'd go, it's not a one-person job, it's something that we support with as well. And it starts with the brief as well. So what do you need to listen for? And we work on that and get to the point where actually because if you don't get the stream right in the first instance, obviously that's point one. So yeah, just thought it was a nice kind of.
Yeah, thanks, Rosie. Yeah, good point. And hopefully we've made it as simple as possible, but we're all on hand to help should you need it. So going on from that, I can't stress there's a potential here that you're going to gather lots and lots of pieces of data. So there's numerous ways in which you can filter. So there's the obvious keyword searches here, and if you're feeling a bit brave, you can go to the advanced search area where you can put in more Boolean logic. But on the right-hand side here, you can see the ways in which you can filter all of this data to suit whatever sort of filtering down or narrowing down that you need to get to. And I thought it'd be interesting here to just say, well, I mentioned earlier that 19 to 29-year-olds are generally quite disengaged. A lot of them will probably vote for their first time. Maybe it's interesting to see what really matters to them. And when we filter on those people, we're able to do this demographic breakdown of their interests and their makeup as well. So it actually turns out that most people who are talking about the UK government between that age range happen to be women. Obviously, they're 19 to 29 because that's a filter I've put on. And actually, they generally tend to be in the Cambridgeshire area. They're the most engaged and talking about it most. And they're probably no surprise, their largest interest is around social and political issues. You can then get a deep dive into their general emotion, so how they're feeling as a group of people. Confused, disapproving, anger is generally their sentiment. And we can even dive into and say, well, who are the key influencers? Who's talking about this the most? So the Gay Times, they've only created one post, but they've got a following of 434,000 people. As an organisation, they're having quite a large share of voice. So you may want to involve them in conversation and understand what it is they're thinking, feeling, how they can shape policies to better engage these people. Conversely, we can look at who's talking the most. So this is in the last, like I said, 5-6 days. This individual here has made 25 posts. Who are they? What influence are they having? And can we talk to them more? Can we involve them in more of the conversation and help us shape what we should be doing?
A question there, sorry. Just thought while we're on that section. So does the report show you the top sources in terms of where this data is being scraped from?
Yep. So I'll just jump through some of these tabs to save a bit of time. We break the data down when I find it. We can flick here between what's going on Twitter, what's going on press media, what would be on Facebook, etc. as well. Then you can filter down further into the various sources within that. So if you have review sites on here, that would be there. If we were pulling data from your inbox, which would be like across Instagram, Nextdoor, TikTok, wherever, that would all be in here as well. And you have to filter by that, as well as geographies too, if that matters. So yeah, back here. So again, what are the other interests of those people who are sitting in that age group? Well, obviously, education's massively important to them, sports and recreation, so facilities available to them in the community, and then finally as well, arts and culture. Birmingham City Council, there's a lot of press about them recently. Obviously, they became bankrupt and they've cut all funding to arts and culture projects. That has actually been, for a lot of people, we talk about antisocial behaviour and getting people off the streets. Those sorts of arts and culture type programs are actually getting kids off the streets and into other communities where they were participating in plenty of activities they weren't doing before. And maybe they're not the most academic in terms of their bookworms necessarily, but this is where they're going to get their escape and sort of move out of the social housing areas that they're currently in. I also thought it'd be interesting here to look at, well, we saw earlier, didn't we, that environmental issues was a big area of disapproval. We talked about climate change and so on. We saw that was like the second most talked about thing when people talk about disapproval within the UK and the government. And then we could start to break down, well, who are these people? What are they talking about? What are their biggest interests? And here we see, like, again, there's a smattering of the gender differences, as well as, people who really love animals and education. Again, the goal here is to let's use these people here in the community who are the most vocal to help get their advice, help them shape our policies. What comms campaigns can we run to really engage them better, to correct misinformation, or tell them tell them about all the great things you are doing, so everything always seen as negative. We also built a dashboard specifically around antisocial behaviour in housing. So this is just me trying to show you the different ways in which you can use the product based on various different streams and search criteria you can place on it. So over the last, again, 5-6 days, we've had 830 bits of data, and you can see here that this dashboard looks very different from the other one. So this is built bespoke for this persona. And again, we've got the theme cloud here telling us what's being talked about, what are the key themes, and unfortunately, again, a lot of it is negative, and probably even more so after like budget cuts come in. But people talk about substandard temporary accommodation, affordable housing not being available, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, if you dig into some of this, you do see quite angry people talking about lots of different things, which aren't always that comfortable to read. But what I found was really interesting here was across the UK, why is there this massive spike in pollution? Like, what's going on there? And again, we can click into this, see the data for itself, and then build the theme clusters and so on, and then that will then help us better understand what's happening in that area. So yeah, again, there's only one big topic of conversation that's happening in that big spike, and that's basically people saying that the allocation of funds isn't fair in that area. And you can see how the retweet and this resyndication of content has actually made that spread quite broadly across the UK. So again, what can we do to change our policies, offer better services, correct misinformation, sort of calm the communities, or actually get them involved in helping us solve some of the problems? But I just think that was a really neat way that we could quite clearly see where should we focus in an area, and we can break this geography down from country, county, city, and even local wards within the area as well. So if you are Birmingham City Council or Coventry City Council, wherever you are, you can really narrow down to specific areas to see what concerns exist within the different pots. Going on from that, a lot of it's about taking action. So when you dive into the data, you can actually get to the raw posts themselves. So you don't just have to live in that nice graphical world. And from here, you can see every single post, or whether it be a news article or a Twitter post or a Facebook post, wherever it may be, or a DM, and you can do something with it. And I think that's the most important thing. So the most simple thing we can do is obviously reply to these individuals. So if we see this person here talking about a certain problem they're having, there's another person on Twitter actually trying to help them out and give them some advice. What we may want to do is actually push them to the inbox. From this point, for those of you familiar with Orlo, we've got a unified inbox where all the bits of data come into, and you can reply to them directly. And this allows you to take this conversation offline and give this person the support they need and direct them to the services that will help them the best. Equally, if Rosie's the one who needs to be concerned with this, I can assign this to her, I can tag this, and then whenever she logs in, she'll be able to have access to it and find it really quickly as well. And if you really wanted to, you can share it natively, or you can send a post out by your email to whoever you think needs to see it. So I think that's a really neat way of forming action. The other way to act, obviously, really easily, you can access our composed post area up here and create a campaign to correct misinformation, to tell people where to get help, etc. You're all familiar with this part of the product, but it means you can reach a real broad swathe of your community really quickly and really cheaply, and then later on see what the impact of that has been. We also have some really neat capabilities around detecting the unknown unknowns. So this part of our product here is called the anomaly detection area. And what this lets you do is say, across all the data we're collecting, if you ever see a spike of information, it could be something, it could be nothing, I want to know about it. So typically where we would set this is if we get 10 mentions of anything within a 5-minute period or within an hour period, we want to know about it. And this is where you can start to alert yourself to particular issues. And we saw that recently with one of the NHS trusts, where all of a sudden people started spiraling on the socials, and we were able to alert the right people so they can come and have a look at it before it gets out of hand. And quite a sad scenario, but that's literally what happened with the mold, the mold issues that happened in the housing associations. That poor child passed away. The way that story spread so quickly across socials caught a lot of the housing associations off guard, and even local government as well, and councils. And our goal is really to try and give you the information really quickly as it occurs, and anything that could potentially be a crisis that you're going to need to manage. And that's what this tool gives you here, and you get those alerted to you straight away. Via email, and you can also dig into here and see those, see what those spikes of data are. And then really the final bit of action is here. I don't know how many of you are aware of the automation part of Orlo, formerly called triggers. But from here, you can say, whenever we collect any information, whatever data comes in on any platform that we're connected to, whether that be a news article or a post or a tweet, whatever it may be, you can put a search on it and say, if anybody's talking about a particular theme, let's talk about here, knife crime, for example. We use semantic search here. So anybody talk about knife crime and also bring in stabbings, those I can't remember, there's a horrible name for one of those gun knives that are really awful that Idris Elba was trying to get banned. Anything like that, any mention of that, you haven't got to give every star of the keyword you want to search for, and that's why theme searching is really interesting, is that semantic search capability. You can then do something with it. Now that something could be push it to the inbox. Like, I want to know about it straight away. It could be send me an email. But what we've really been able to do quite neatly is this option here called send a webhook. What this lets you do is integrate with other products that you use. So the police forces, for example, are able to integrate these alerts into Microsoft Teams. So they're not, like I said earlier, everyone's having to use loads of applications throughout the day. By using something like webhooks, you can push a notification to Teams, Slack, wherever it may be, and then get notified of it immediately, and then link back so you can see what that tweet was, what that post was, so you can take some action on it. That, in essence, is a whistle-stop tour of what All O Insights is. I'll just flip back to the slides. Where are the slides? Okay.
Yeah.
And that I hope is really what I really wanted to get across there is what tools like this can do, what All O Insights can provide for you is the ability to listen everywhere. People talking directly to you and about you. There was also a really horrible scenario we experienced with one of the councils a few weeks ago, where a particular lady was talking about the domestic violence she'd been facing over the last few years, and the council didn't help. That council wasn't actually added or directly mentioned, but through All O Insights, we were able to find it and do something with it and get that person some help through that council, which really talks to the understanding piece. So really delving into what are the key themes, what are the real areas of concern, where are people feeling vulnerable, fearful, etc. And also not just the emotions and the topics, but also where they are, who are these people, what is the demographic, so that you can take action, whether that be one-on-one, creating a new campaign, or changing your policies, products, services to help better support them. Let everybody know the great changes you've made or the great action you've taken. And the goal then is to continue listening and see that, those issues that were problematic before go away and we can focus on the next thing. So that's really the purpose of All O Insights. So I hope you enjoyed that and found it interesting and found it useful. Like I mentioned, I've literally skimmed the surface there of what All O Insights has. There's a boatload more. And if you do want to know, just type word insights into the Q&A box and one of the team will follow up with you straight after the webinar. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Rosie.
Thank you, Hans. That's brilliant. Just want to go back to that question, obviously, around the sources and scraping the data. It's right to say that we're taking that data direct from the source, aren't we? We're not scraping anything. It's coming straight from an API. Is that right? Yeah,
we've got agreements and licenses in place to collect all the data in the correct way. So everything's done above board. It's not scraping. A lot of it sits in archives as well. There's billions of articles sat in archives that we can trawl through as well. So, yeah.
And in terms of those news articles, gated sites, they're also included, aren't they? Ones that are kind of behind a subscription paywall.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned The Guardian earlier. So a lot of times I'll get a link from a friend saying, I read this article and I'm going to pay the £1 to access it. Through the All O application and the links we have with tools like LexisNexis, we access all the data behind the paywalls as well. And a lot of the local press as well. So this isn't just like the big brands, it could be the Warwickshire Courier, Leamington Observer, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, amazing, thank you. Yeah, so if you do have an interest in insights, please drop it in the Q&A tab and our team will reach out with some more information. We now are in our Q&A section, so please do, if you've got any questions for any of us, me included, drop them in the Q&A and we'll go through that now. We've got about 20 minutes. We have had some questions come through prior to the session, so I'll kickstart with those. The first one, how would a department look to onboard a tool like this, and what does phase one look like? I will start with that one just because I think it fits nicely into my role as a success manager. So I've, over the past, since January really, been working primarily with housing associations to onboard this product. And the way that we break it down, phase one is the platform can obviously just look at your own data. What do you currently have? All those conversations happening in your inbox. We don't need to always plug in the additional streams straight away. So in the example that we had recently, it was a housing association, massive focus on repairs. We ran the theme cloud over the inbox, and boiler issues was there as a burning issue over the last few weeks. Now they know repairs is a problem, it's a big focus for the business, but they didn't actually know that boiler issues was such a big part of that. So that was our first report that we were going to take away and make. And that's how I would see this. It's let's first get it over your data layer, see what the AI returns, and from that we can start to build out those separate reports. That's obviously something that your success manager would work with you on. It could feel like a daunting challenge if you're kind of left to do that by yourself. In the example of the boiler issue, the separate report that we were able to pull out and make, we had issues, theme clouds, and a trust indicator on that particular service. We could then pull out the conversation at sentiment level and volume with things like wait times, on hold, and very quickly we could paint a picture of, actually, we've now got people with a safety risk on a particular issue in their home with a huge volume of wait. There's a problem here with people not getting the service that they need. Now, that report typically would just sit and stay with the comms and marketing team. What Insights then did was actually we could push that to the repair email within the business, and that now automatically goes every Monday morning. So it's about, let's create the first report and then let's push this wider in the business. Let's not just keep this in the comms and marketing team or the service team. Let's actually get it out wider. And then what you'll find is people start to, their ears prick a bit, and there's an interest suddenly in this social data that we've been sat on for so long. And I think, phase one for me is let's get the report over your data layer. And if we can just build one report bespoke off the back of that in the first 1 to 2, 3 months, then we've achieved goal one, essentially. I don't know if there's anything that Hars or Jack, you can kind of add to that in terms of the best approach to onboard the product.
Yeah, I think the quickest advice that the advice I always give is, with that query stream, don't get too worried about creating it. Sometimes just creating the most generic one as possible and let the AI surface what's important, and you can refine it over time as well. You're not going to lose any of that data. Then you can use multiple streams as well if you need to. You're not limited to just the one. So I think you're right, Rosie.
Amazing. Okay, next question. How have you seen this be used to prevent risk, and do you have any examples? So obviously the one I've just touched on there very much goes back to company initiatives. Jack, I don't know if you've got any examples. I know you've done a lot of work with train companies in terms of how they can prevent risk.
Yeah, so they've got a lot of objectives around accessibility and making sure that people that are vulnerable get the service that they need when travelling. So there's been quite a few examples where accessibility has been booked, and then what's happened is they haven't turned up, and they're on the platform and they can't get on or off the train, and obviously that's a huge safety issue, but also extremely frustrating for the customer. And the train company needs to be aware of this on quite a lot of occasions. There's been tweets sent out atting certain train companies, or not even mention them entirely, but them being able to pick that up and being alerted. So not only has it supported them from a safety point of view and making sure that person does have a safe journey and gets to their destination, and from a PR perspective as well, they've been able to be alerted to those straight away. And one of them quite a while ago was a Paralympian who basically didn't get the service that she needed and complained, but were able to pick up on that and address that issue straight away. But there's numerous examples in travel especially, but then we also work with a number of ICBs, trusts, and off the back of those types of organisations are kind of under that umbrella are support for mental health or disability, and people that are struggling, having the alert set up to be aware of who they are, what the problems are, to actually proactively intervene and get them help has been a real success for us too. So there's so many different use cases for people that are talking online about particular topics that they do need help. Often people that are experiencing domestic abuse, for example, might turn to something like social media because it's not so obvious that they're asking for help. So just being everywhere and being able to listen, alert and understand and act on that is so powerful, no matter who you are as an organisation, whether you are a council, NHS, police force. It's a really, really powerful tool to be able to alert and action things straight away, as well as being able to find trends to address those strategically too.
Yeah, and I think actually just listening to you talk about, there's a big use case for this particular product to help build confidence within a business or an organisation for the use of social media. So I obviously, leaning back on my knowledge of housing associations, typically when you get to the top and leadership, there is a real nervousness around social media. So we've got one particular customer that works with us, and the first thing they did with Insights is just put those theme alerts and triggers in place. So their team can go off at the weekend, and it was actually at Christmas, just before Christmas we put it in place, but they could have a Christmas break and know that if anything was to happen on social, it goes straight into their inbox, they're alerted about it. And that confidence that it's built with the people above them is significant. And, you know, that journey of their social journeys actually started with the listening. We then plan to move it into do the customer service piece, let's do the full comms plan. But it's interesting, like flipping it the other way around, and actually let's use this as a way to build confidence in people above.
Yeah, there's that confidence piece, but definitely that prevention piece as well that we mentioned earlier about being able to spot trends and individuals and address those straight away has a financial impact, which is so important given the cuts and the way that we understand, you know, public sector are so squeezed on budget. So there's a huge benefit to doing this really well.
Amazing. We've had a question through. So at the start of your webinar, Jack, you mentioned working with partners in local areas, so councils, NHS housing, etc. And how do you see the product helping those work closer together to support the community?
Yeah, I think data sharing's a good one. Obviously, you've got to be careful from a GDPR point of view what you share, but I think what's happening is organisations such as ICBs, councils, police forces all want similar outcomes, and they want the public that they serve to feel safe, to access the services that they need, to drive prosperity, right? The trouble is that they're not typically working together as well as they could be. So my advice would be, if you're a leader within a trust or an ICB or a council, is what data do they have that's going to also support your organisation? And the beauty for us is if two organisations that have a large responsibility and budget responsibility for a big population, like a county council or a combined authority, sharing data with the ICB or the police force, for example, on what the current trends are locally to actually guide safety initiatives that are specific for that community is extremely powerful. And it's probably the biggest opportunity that we have as a public sector, where we're not competitive, for the majority of the time we're not competitive anyway, is to be able to share data like that and use tools, solutions that are going to enable better outcomes. So that's the big opportunity there, I feel, and we're just kind of scraping the surface with that at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's also a piece as well of, you know, often these partners in local areas might have a quarterly meeting, or there's an event where they, you know, come together and can have that conversation. If you were to put their public Facebook pages into a listening tool and can track and monitor, you know, the conversations that their audience are having with them, you don't necessarily need to wait for that, you know, face-to-face to happen. You've got a reason to reach out and talk to them and build that relationship as well, I guess. Mm-hmm. There's a conversation starter by just having an ear on what their audience is saying to them as well. So a few people asking if this is being recorded. It is, yeah. So anyone who has subscribed to the session will get the recording shortly after. So don't need to worry about that. Some technical questions. We had someone come through previous to the session wanting to know a little bit more about the emotion analysis and how that's kind of worked out. Like, what is the technology behind it, if you can share?
Yeah, I suppose it's buzzword of the hour is AI, isn't it? Seems to be the answer to everything. We've utilised lots of different data models to extract what we think are the key emotions that people sort of express that we think would be most beneficial to decision making or taking action on. So we extract 28 different emotions using proprietary AI, which we're quite proud of. And a lot of what you saw earlier is obviously AI doing it. So when I clicked on that bit in Lewisham, it analysed 1,000 bits of text to say this is a key theme. We're using pretty much the same technology there as well to do that. Bit like anything, being completely transparent, sentiment analysis, emotion analysis is never perfect. We aim to get pretty high accuracies, but also what you've got in the tool, if you ever spot it being wrong, you can automatically correct it. That helps our models improve as well. So it's kind of like a fulfilling cycle. It doesn't quite self-correct, but we retrain the models and it gets better over the time, but it's clearly flipping accurate as it is now. We're quite proud of it.
Yeah, and I think obviously, is it up to 30 emotions we report on, or is it
It's 28, I think.
28?
Yeah, so quite a lot.
Nearly there. So, I mean, I've seen examples where obviously you can report on all of them, but I've worked with customers where we've just drilled down and just look at people who are confused, because that's what you can address in your comms. Where are the question marks?
Yeah.
Where are people struggling to access portals or information on your website? You don't need to look at all 28. You can just drill down into actually where are we confusing people as a business, and what are the quick wins in terms of addressing certain services.
Completely, yes. It depends on your motive, isn't it? So when you know what to look for, when you've got an objective in mind and you want to know, right, so what is it that our community, our tenants aren't happy with? I would go straight to the disapproval emotion. What is it they are disapproving about? If you want to know what is making you feel vulnerable, I'd look at the fearful emotions and grief. Look at those ones, and then you can start to say, well, what is it that we can do to support these people who are feeling vulnerable? But conversely, where people are feeling like joyful, learn from that. Like, what you're doing really well, and celebrate it. Shout about all your successes, because it does always feel like we're always on the back foot. That negative. What's that word when you always just focus on the negative all the time? The negative bias.
Yeah.
There's a whole load of good stuff that everyone is doing all the time. Shout about it. Let people know. It builds confidence in your organisations as well. They'll only know about the good stuff if you tell them.
Yeah, so there's almost the opposite of what I've just said. If you're putting out annual reports or certain comms and confusion is dropping, if you pass that back to the business, that's your job as comms. You've achieved objectives. You can almost flip the switch in terms of narrative.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so one last question from the pre-session. So I guess this one's probably more for you, Jack. Out of the people that you work with and have spoken to, how well prepared do you feel organisations are for a big safety crisis?
Crisis comms, I think, is something that everyone puts on the back burner, so to speak, because you think, well, it probably won't happen. Very few organisations, even quite prominent ones, have a proper crisis comm plan in place. And I suppose there's so many things going on in comms, there's so many plates being spun, very busy, usually quite under-resourced teams, that it probably does fall down the priority list. But when we've been able to tie crises and being able to be alert and take action to, it's like the theme detection, for example, to setting up alerts for your organisation where people that are vulnerable, people that maybe are feeling scared or angry, whatever emotions they might be showing, you can uncover those and understand what the drivers are for them. It can actually be a massive prevention to supporting a crisis or an emerging crisis too. So most teams I speak to don't have a defined strategy for crisis comms, and they need a bit of help and support. We're that, I suppose, like I said earlier, that as a technology, our responsibility is to be that bridge to support initiatives for your own team, but also for the safety of those that you're serving as well. So, it does vary quite a bit, but I'd say most of the time not from that point of view.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that brings us to the end of our questions. Just to check I've covered all of them. There's one final one from a technical point of view. I should have probably done this after the emotion analysis question, but it's looking at the trust indicator HARDS and what logic we've applied to that in terms of building it. It's quite rare to see being able to put a tangible metric behind trust. So
it's probably one of the bits I'm most proud of in all that we showed you today. It's trust is interesting. People have spoken to me before about this. I'm probably going to bore you because I'll go through the same story, but trust isn't actually an emotion, it's a belief. And people always think trust is a positive thing. It can be a negative thing as well. But the analogy I always give, there's two pubs in the village I live in. I trust one of them to be absolutely terrible, and I trust the other one to be great fun. So it's kind of like, you believe they are going to do what they say they're going to do, and if it's going to be, that can be positive or negative. So we've actually used some research in collaboration with Harvard Business School to look at what the drivers of trust are, and a lot of them tend to be based around approval versus disapproval. You believing that organisation has your best interests at heart. Approval is you believe what they're doing is the right thing. Disapproval is then what they're doing is the wrong thing. And then also logic. You've got empathy or belief in the way they're approaching the particular challenges that you need them to solve are logical, they're the right thing to do, they make sense to you. A combination of those things build trust. You approve of them, seems logical to you, and you believe that they care about you. That tends to create trust. We use that with a few other bits of the algorithm that we've built out to actually calculate that score and show these are drivers of trust, both positive drivers and negative drivers as well, so distrust.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant addition to the product, and it's nice to be able to have that side by side on different service levels and how you can watch that dial change in terms of trust over time. So I think this will probably be our last question, just looking at the time. Could it be used in the event of a cyber attack? And I'm probably put that to you hard.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a scenario there. In the event of, we've got various tools for cyber attacks. It's funny, we were talking about it the other day. I think Leicester City Council had an issue, didn't they? I think yesterday or the day before as well, where they came under an attack. I think the best part of our product that can help within the cyber attacks is actually the comms area and the inbox management. So where you're having to shut down various platforms, being able to still communicate out through socials to make people aware of what's going on. Similarly, using things like our chatbot or live chat capabilities to service customers when maybe some of your internal comms platforms are down, such as telephony, email, etc., while you sort of tidy up the cyber attack. I think that's where Orlo on its whole can be most beneficial to you, and we've actually seen that being used in the past as well. But also from a cyber attack perspective, I think you've got to really see what is it you want to look for across all the press and media and the individual text as well. I think as soon as a public sector organisation gets faced by any sort of malicious intent, the press seem to make a lot of it, and they share it quite broadly as well, and it becomes quite a big thing quite quickly, which then means you need to then settle the nerves of the citizens, the tenants, and someone that you're servicing as well. So maybe it could be used from the anomaly detection that I mentioned earlier, that all of them is a spike of conversation around this malicious intent or this attack, which then guides what you can do next, shut systems down, etc.
And maybe for that post-analysis piece as well, like what impact did this have on our people's trust in us as a business? What conversations were people having over a period of time? Yeah,
the most common emotion, if we're going to go back to that, would be this thing about fear and curiosity. Like, so what did this mean for me? What data have they now got about me? Am I at risk? All that sort of stuff. It immediately goes to how am I going to be impacted by this cyber attack? Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. That completes our Q&A. So we are 3 minutes to go, so we're right on time. Final word, I mean, lots of people have put this in the Q&A already. If you do have an interest in the product or want to hear more, just type insights in the Q&A box, and we've got a team monitoring, so they will reach out and be in touch. And we can do a more bespoke session similar to what Haz has done today. But yeah, please drop that in the Q&A if you are interested. We have 2 more of these sessions. I believe there's one next week and the week after, which will be covering different topics. So today was safety. You should get a link, or if you subscribe to this, you'll be reached out in terms of joining those sessions too. So thank you for your time and joining us. Really appreciate it. And thank you from us.